Hello everybody and welcome to Fortuna Admissions video blog. My name is Caroline Diarte Edwards. I'm a director at Fortuna Admissions and I'm here today with my colleague Catherine Tuttle. Catherine was an associate director at Duke's Fuqua School of Business in the Career Management Center, and she also worked closely with the admissions team. So the topic we want to discuss right now is what you should be doing now to figure out your career goals if you're planning to apply to business school in the next season. So for the deadline starting this fall, September, October. So Catherine, what are your thoughts on what candidates could be doing right now to help them develop their career goals?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you know, as an associate director within the Career Management Center at Fuqua, part of my role was giving presentations to prospective students about things that they could be doing now to prepare themselves for that MBA journey. And what I've learned in that role and my work with Fortuna clients is that self-assessment is so important. And you know, when you're starting now, the great news is you have a lot of time to start thinking about these things thoughtfully and in advance, so that you're able to more clearly articulate goals that will resonate with the admissions office. So self-assessment, you know, is the #1 thing we can do. So start to think about what you're good at. You know, what do you do now that you enjoy, that you want to keep doing post-MBA? You know, what do you never want to do again once you have an MBA, right? Let's be honest with ourselves. There are going to be things that you're happy to get rid of, right?
Yeah.
You know, what's important to you when it comes to work, right? What type of environment do you want to be in? Do you want flexibility? Do you want to travel? Do you want recognition? Understand these things that are important to you, not only from a job duty standpoint, but also from an environmental standpoint and a cultural standpoint. You know, all too often we'd have these students come in, you know, gung-ho consulting, and then they realize, you know, a few weeks into that process or a few months into that process that they didn't want to travel, you know, every week. And you could have saved yourself a lot of time and frustration if you'd done that research on the back end. So understand what's important to you, and from there you're going to be able to better evaluate options as they come up. So how do you identify those options? You know, the first thing you can do is start to talk to your mentors and your advocates within your current organization. You know, what did they see as your strengths? And what do they picture you doing in the future? Oftentimes that feedback can be really helpful. You know, where are you adding value and where could they see you adding value in other areas? And finally, I think start to network with people that have an MBA. You know, those can be within your current organization, or they could be external contacts or friends of friends, or simply people who graduated from the schools that you're interested in attending, and ask them about that process and what they considered their reasons for going to school, and how the MBA ultimately helped them achieve their career vision. And oftentimes when you start to talk to people and understanding their motivations and their values, you're going to start to be able to kind of put that path on paper.
Okay. And how do you suggest that candidates go about doing their research into, you know, whether the business school can actually support them in achieving those career goals?
So I think talking to the school, talking to current students, talking to alumni, and helping them understand what resources they were able to leverage within the program. I think it's once you start to hone in, you can also look at things like the employment report from the school to see if recruiters are coming in your specific area, if the recruiters that the companies that you're specifically interested in have partnerships with those schools. You know, that information is typically available on their website and pretty easy to access. And then talking with people can help elaborate on some of that information.
Right. Okay. And what are your thoughts about the process for someone who's has the ambition of going to business school, but really doesn't know where to start in terms of thinking about which direction to go in post MBA, and has lots of great ideas. Maybe I should be an entrepreneur. Maybe I should be a management consultant. Often clients that we're working with have a number of paths that they're thinking about pursuing post MBA, and it can be difficult for them to focus that down. So what are your thoughts on that process?
Yeah, and I have a client like that right now, actually, who's just starting to think through this. And first person in her family to pursue an MBA, doesn't really feel like she has that role model to look to. And it can be overwhelming. It really can. And oftentimes, we're hesitant to walk away from things because it could be something really great. And how do we know if it's the right thing or the wrong thing? Part of that is, especially when you're working with a coach at Fortuna, is really sitting down and having an honest conversation about the things talked about at the beginning. So what have you enjoyed most at work? What are you really good at? What have you been recognized for? What are your interests outside of work, or what other things have you considered? And starting to, oftentimes that feedback and having an honest party across from you who can give you some feedback and say, well, you mentioned that recognition is really important to you, or you expressed that working in a team environment, collaboration and culture is incredibly important. Some of these options don't give you that have to have. So maybe we can start to take that off the table. And I also tell people all the time, nobody's going to follow you around with this admissions essay for your 2 years at school, right? I mean, it's okay to change your mind once you get. We used to joke at orientation that half of people would change their minds, right? And that's okay. Business school is about exploration, and so just because you cross it off in your essay doesn't mean that if you get to school and fall in love with it, you can't pursue it. But what admissions is really looking for is clear, concise career goals that make sense and that align with the mission of the organization and align with their partners from an employer standpoint. So, we want to be thoughtful about this. We want to narrow in and really be specific about what you want to do and create a clear story. But just because you kind of ignore something from an application standpoint doesn't mean that you're writing it off forever.
Sure. Yes, and I think what we see as well is that the clients who really spend a lot of time on figuring this out and doing their research and networking and all the good things that you've mentioned, find that pays dividends, right, once they start the MBA program, that it really helps them to hit the ground running with their job search and get focus and get clarity on that more quickly than some of the other students are able to do.
Yeah, because even if you get there and you decide that this option may not be the right thing for you, you still have all of this good information to fall back on, and other options that you've considered, and conversations that you can reflect on, and a network to fall back on. So it really is. It's one of the hardest parts of the process, is really kind of pushing yourself to think through this and create clear goals. But I do remember last year, Caroline, it was a client that both of us had that went to Kellogg, and she emailed us the first semester and said, I am so glad you pushed me because I'm so far ahead of some of my classmates, because she had taken the time to think through it and articulate those goals.
That's great. All right. Well, thank you very much, Catherine. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today.